A year later, the underground exploded into the mainstream with the release of Cannibal Holocaust, whose stunning panoramas and memorable score mysteriously belied the savagery of its content.
Cannibal Holocaust falls into the category of a movie that's so low budget you kind of believe it's real. And then you look at the people they use, and they use real cannibals and like jungle savages when they film this. You think, what monster made this movie?
The courts accused me of really killing and torturing people. The court wanted to see the film with me, so they took me to a special room. Immediately from the judge's reaction, because he grimaced every time he saw a shocking scene, I could see that I would be convicted.
The film opened in Italy on the 8th of February 1980 and caused uproar. It appeared to show documentary footage where people were beheaded, castrated and eaten by cannibals. It resulted in it being banned in Italy and Britain.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Backstage Past. Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Backstage Past, where we explore the detailed history of entertainment's most troubled productions. And happy 2023. We're in the future now. We're recording in the past, hours prior to the changing. I have quite a way to start off the new year. We are talking about possibly, in a format and bringing back Backstage Past, as you just heard, we're going to be talking about one of the most controversial films ever made, and it is still very controversial and a hard watch. We're looking at Cannibal Holocaust, and we've chosen to do this as Ruggero Deodato, the director, has just recently passed away, unfortunately. So we thought now is the best time to look at this controversial film, and I'm going to now pass it over to the man himself, to the master of the video nasties. It's Dennis Whittle.
Well, hello there. Video nasty indeed.
You've been dying to talk about video nasties.
Yeah, I think before we talk about Cannibal Holocaust, we just need to do a very brief kind of overview of what video nasties are. Because as though Cannibal Holocaust had cinematic releases throughout the world, it did not in the UK. It was released straight to video, meaning that anybody with a video player could watch it. At the time, in the early 80s, video wasn't put in front of the BBFC. So anything could basically get put on video. So during the 80s, there was this massive outcry about video nasties. And the two movies that kind of launched the video nasties were Driller Killer and Cannibal Holocaust. Now, the Driller Killer one was because they did a massive page in the trade times with the front cover of a drill going in someone's head. And the Cannibal Holocaust one was a stunt by the video releases, a distributor, who actually wrote a letter to Mary Whitehouse complaining about their own film, which kind of backfires a little bit. Basically, there were 72 films added to the Video Obscenity Act of 1950-something. Now, these were films that were deemed to be obscene or too violent for the general public. Now, this act was brought in mainly for erotic films, not horror movies and things like that. So what you ended up having was people being prosecuted, average Joes down at your local, corner shop, being prosecuted and given sentences on a legislation that didn't really cover these sort of movies. Section 1 and Section 2. So Section 1 was 39 movies, and these were the ones that you could be prosecuted and sent to prison for. Section 2 were the ones that the police would just take off you and basically destroy them. Obviously, Cannibal Holocaust is in section 1.
Well, big surprise there.
You can understand a little bit about the video nasty kind of outcry, but when you dive a little bit deeper into it and you find out that the main MP behind it all never ever watched a video nasty. Mary Whitehouse never watched a video nasty. When they went into schools and stuff to ask kids whether they'd seen a video nasty, they said yes. But then when the people producing the movies went in and asked them, said, have you seen, Santa's Big Axe? They'll go, oh yeah, it's really good, this and the other. Didn't exist. So it was all built on lies. And the legislation itself, because somebody forgot to add something in, meant it was discovered in the early I think it was 2001, that it wasn't worth the paper it was written on because they hadn't properly looked at it. They rushed it through.
Yeah, of course.
But most of the movies now are readily available with little or no cuts. When the legislation started to kind of get a little bit more relaxed, like you had like the 18R, which again were erotic movies. A few other movies started to come out. A few other distributors started to put the movies in front of the BBFC, doing little tiny cuts here, little tiny cuts there. And Cannibal Holocaust was released in 2001 with 5 minutes and 44 seconds cut out of it. It was then re-released again in 2011 with 15 seconds cut out of it. It has now come out quite recently, completely uncut. And this was a film that at the time was banned because it would have made you go out and commit atrocities. And the main thing behind the video nasties were children having access to horror movies. So parents, maybe, stop them doing it. Basically, it was Tory MPs telling the little guy, you're not watching that. End of story. Because there was no proof behind any of it. But Cannibal Holocaust, the movie we're going to discuss today, was one of the original video nasty, the second proper labelled video nasty after Driller Killer.
There we are. So that's Dennis's spiel on video nasties. He's been wanting to talk about video nasties for as long as I can remember.
I could go on and on
and on and on. And I agree. I don't believe in censorship. I believe in age ratings and warnings. But leave the films untouched, leave the art untouched. And this film has definitely not been left untouched, but the version I've seen is something. We'll get into it. I'm going to warn people now, if you do follow the show, if you do listen, this is even quite extreme for today. 40 plus years after its release, it's still quite shocking. I watched it today, and I'm still kind of wincing and grimacing at certain scenes. It features the death and mutilation of at least 6 animals, including a turtle, a muskrat, a monkey, a spider, a snake. I think that's and various other things as well. Pig, yeah. I forgot about the pig. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the pig.
You try to wipe them from your mind.
Oh, I did. So that is the main thing that people remember and take away from this film. There's other kind of offensive parts to it. There's no judgment if you like the film, fair enough. If you don't like the film or you never want to see the film because of the things it has in, again, fair enough. I totally understand. But I've done it for you, so nobody else has to watch it. Me and Dennis have, if you don't. But let's talk about it. So we're here to talk about the troubled production mainly. We will go into our thoughts on the film a little bit later and as we go through. But let's start with the pre-production of the film, Dennis. I'll let you speak again. As I give you this option every time we record. You're allowed to have free speech, but I will edit some things out depending on what you say.
Listen, I really do appreciate you giving me the first up on this, but really, Italian horror movies, as we've spoken, never run smoothly.
No.
None of the pre-production for any Italian movie has ever gone to plan.
Go and listen to our Demons podcast.
Yeah, this is by no means the exception to it. Even though the director had done 3 cannibal, Native American, whatever they're doing type movies before, but this was a little bit different, and it kind of grew out of an idea about the way the media represents themselves on TV. So, for instance, during the time this movie was conceived and written and put together, there was quite a few terrorist attacks and things within Italy, and the media were allowed to show everything, and it was brutal. You know, I've seen some stock footage today where you saw people being shot, the aftermaths of burn-ins and people in cars being mowed down with bullets. And this was on primetime TV. This was all the time.
The Prime Minister was assassinated as well, wasn't he? It was a far left-wing group called the Red Brigade.
The Red Brigade, yeah. So he wouldn't let his son watch the news, and his son didn't want to watch the news because it was, you know, quite brutal. Yet every time he put a film in front of the censors or anyone like that, they just basically said, you need to cut this out, cut that out, cut this. Well, hang on a minute. Look at what's happening on our streets. You're fine to show that. And you're only showing the bits that you want to show. You're not showing the other side of the argument. You're not discussing what other people are doing. You're not discussing what the police are doing. You're not discussing what the right are doing. So this kind of motivated him to think and conceive of a movie.
Movie's a strong word as well.
Of a movie to kind of highlight this.
He was hired by a German production company because I think it's Umberto Lenzi did Man from Deep River, which was the first Italian cannibal film, and the German production company said, we want another one of these. So Umberto, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want more money, first of all. And they went, right, fuck you, Umberto, off you pop. And they said, who else is available? And they went, Ruggero Deodato. And he went and did what they call one of several hundred titles the film has is Last Cannibal World. And this also featured the killing of animals. However, Ruggero did not film the killing of the animals. Apparently, I don't know if this is true, but the German production company said that in Japan, films sell better if they know that there's actual killing of animals in it. I don't know if this is true. I know that this film made 21 million in Japan. I don't know if that's the evidence there. I can't say. I'm not entirely sure about the cultural zeitgeist at the time in Japan, but that's their thinking. So they shot those scenes for Last Cannibal World, and Ruggero said, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be involved in that, which is fair enough. That's not his decision, that's theirs. So sure, they're providing the money. Why not? So they said, well, that did really well. Can we get another one? And that's where all these kind of ideas that you were talking about come from.
The Mondo documentaries as well, which were produced and made just a shock. And there was no kind of way of disguising it. That's what they were there for. So it would show tribal people, it would show atrocities, they would show genocide, they would show all kinds of things, but without any context. And a lot of Cannibal Holocaust is, a lot of the scenes are influenced by this kind of shock.
The Mondo films,
the Mondo stuff. Yeah. So, and what's really weird is the Mondo stuff has never been banned because it's a documentary.
Because it's true to life. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy to think that false, simulated things are so close to being banned, and the artistic vision behind it is crippled in so many ways. But just to show that sort of stuff is crazy. I remember seeing a Vietnam documentary years ago, and there's a guy who shot point blank in the head and killed. And that was shocking to me because I'd never seen a person die in front of me ever or what have you. And I was like, surely they can't show that. But this was like, and this was like the early 2000s or mid 2000s when I saw that, and I thought that is insane, and that's going to stick with me, and it always does.
We had the Faces of Death series that were documentary stock footage, showing all kinds of things on that as well. But because it was true to life, because it was history, should we say, in inverted comment,
we'll get onto that.
that was fine.
Yeah, I know that some of that footage, they show a film, there's a film within the film.
Yes.
Yeah. Called The Road to Hell, I believe, and some of that footage was real executions. You don't technically see those executions in this film, but there's kind of rough dailies, let's call them, that are shown. And those ended up being in Faces of Death, actually. The full clips that are shown are in Faces of Death, but not this film. So you don't see anybody actually die in this film in any form. Animals, as we've discussed, very much in graphic detail. But yeah,
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
You know, he had some tricks up his sleeve when before they went into production of the movie. Certain contracts, certain ideas, certain things that were put in place to make the footage even more realistic. Obviously, they needed, like most Italian movies, they needed a mixture of English speaking and Italian, so they get the tax breaks and things like that. So there's a proper mishmash of people in there. But even the English people were dubbed because they weren't Italian enough, or even the Italians were dubbed because they weren't Italian enough. But yeah, there was. Can we talk about the contracts? Are we going to move on a little bit?
I think we'll leave that for the moment.
Okay.
But yeah, I think. Well, let's move into the production now. I think we've talked enough about the pre-production that he's got all the people he needs. Some people dropped out, and he has these ideas now. The animal killing specifically, because we can't not talk about them because they're quite. There's quite a few and quite graphic and quite long in detail in some of them. Apparently, like all the actors, the director, everybody regrets the animal killing. After the fact, they've said really regret the animal killing. Everything else is like, but the animal killing specifically, everyone goes, yeah, it was bad, shouldn't have done it. We didn't want to do it at the time, but things happen. And apparently that he's come up with a few reasons for why he did this. So again, what we mentioned before, that the producers wanted actual animal killing to sell to the Japanese market. The other is that he grew up on a farm and that animals are killed. Nobody in the supermarket questions where the pork comes from. They need to be killed, obviously, but we don't see it. So, that sort of thing. And that leads to one of the questions at the end of the film that it poses to you, whether that's successful or not. And then he also said, what else did he say? I'm sure there's another reason.
It was blurring the lines, wasn't it?
That's right, blurring the lines of what was reality. If the audience sees the killing and it's a real killing of the animal, then they'll believe the rest of the film, which again, the rest of the film is simulated. All the other stuff is simulated to a degree. But let's talk about the production. So, Dennis, I think this is a great one to bring back this kind of format for, because I think of any production, I think this is one of the more hellish ones to talk about.
What you mean?
You don't? No, it's fine. It's fine. It was a day in the park, this one, for the director, actors, producers, everybody. It
was a bit hot, wasn't it?
Just a little sweaty.
It was sweaty.
Dirty.
Unsanitary.
People, unsafe. People got diseases. The crew and the cast were treated very, very poorly. Incredibly poorly.
Made to do things that today, health and safety gone mad, would be, appalled at it.
Not even health and safety, like
just the guy on the street.
Just like, well, I'll talk about one sequence. We'll get into the other stuff, but the actress who is in the film, the main actress, I think it's Chiardi, I can't remember her first name. I'm sure you'll remind me, but she was asked to. They were asked to do a sex scene. This American guy and this Italian actress, and then they're working on it apparently as well. She said, "Let's rehearse it," and he was like, "What do you mean? Like, let's rehearse it for real. Let's go and have sex in this jungle." And he turned her down apparently. But then there's other stories saying that they were lovers and whatever. But he basically goes to bare her breasts during the sex scene, and she goes, "What are you doing?" Ruggero asked me to bare your breasts in the scene, and she said, "Oh, well, I didn't want to do that." And then he comes out and says, she says, "I don't want to do that." Ruggero takes her off into the jungle, which is bad enough, and then screams at her and manipulates her till she just does it anyway, which, again, would absolutely not happen today.
No, and none of the equipment worked. They had issues with, obviously, the kind of livestock out there, such as piranhas, snakes, spiders, all kinds of things. They were sleeping in basically squalor, weren't they? They were having to live in their own bits. And you kind of you can see it on certain of the actors' faces, as the film goes on, I think.
Yeah. I think the blurring of the lines becomes almost too real as well. Like, there's moments where you're like, how real is this? How, are they even acting at this point, or at this point, or at this point?
Yeah, and the director does have a bit of a reputation for being a bit of an arse. a bit of a Michael Bay, shall we say.
Let's say.
He does scream at people. He does take them on one side. He's been known to hit cast members and things to get a reaction out of them. And to be honest, it's mainly females. He seems to have a bit of an issue with, shall we say. The cast kind of just wanted to get it over and done with in the end, but they kept having to do these scenes, kept having to do the stuff, weren't allowed to question anything, weren't allowed to kind of, say, what's my motivation? Why am I doing this? No, you're doing it. Just go and do what you need to do, including the animal killings.
And that's the thing, is that apparently he said that these were already in the script, the animal killings. But then also there's talk about him improvising and coming up with shit on the day. So there's a lot of hearsay with some of the stories in this. We don't know exactly what happened. The only people that do are the people that were there.
The main I can't remember his name with the brown hair. He's done an interview recently where he said he was told to do the animal stuff. They didn't know anything about it at all, and especially I would say the turtle scene.
Jesus,
I think the reactions that you see from the cast members and crew members, I think are pretty real. I think you can't act that. And no disrespect to the actors on there, they're not the best. They were unknown, young, inexperienced people thrown into a jungle and saying, you will do this. And there are scenes, especially the turtle one, which is very, very difficult to watch, that you can see the reactions on everybody. And none of it's good.
No, you can see it. That I know that during production, a couple of the people the actors were supposed to do some of the killings, but they'd say, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, I won't do this, I'll do this, but I won't do that. So there was a lot of kind of bartering. I think the guy you're speaking about is the character Alan Yates, is played by Carl Gabriel York.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of main kind of character, I guess, if you will, to a degree within a film. And yeah, he basically said he wouldn't kill the pig, and that was done by the Italian actor. And he said he wouldn't do the turtle either. And I think Francesca Chiardi said she wasn't going to do any of the killing, but I'm pretty sure you can see her crying, and she throws up after the turtle's been killed. And then the other actor, the blonde actor with the moustache, he's just looking directly at the camera like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah. It kept getting delays as well. Weather, obviously, it's an Amazon jungle, there's a lot of rain. The equipment was cheap, so it got wet and broken. Actors who were originally chosen, I know there was one of them that the father had got killed.
Yeah.
So then that delayed production as well. And arguments on the set delayed production. And there were lots of them. Apparently there were shouting and screaming every single day on set, which again slowed down production of the movie. Whether it adds to the realism of it, I don't know, because I think there's quite a lot of raw emotion, I think, on the set. Maybe it's made for a better film. I don't know. I think you should treat people well. I don't know. But the some arguments would last an entire day. Wow. With people refusing to do things and production ringing up and saying, why is this not happening? Why is that not happening? Where the deal is? And it was, the female cast member, she would have open rows about certain scenes that she was supposed to be in. And she, to be fair, she was backed up by her male counterparts. Yeah. So it wasn't like all one way. But I think mixing an American production team with an Italian production team, the Italian production team seemed to do a lot more and not that kind of bothered about stuff, where obviously the American were a little bit more kind of switched on about stuff, but none of them were union either. They went for non-union actors, so they could get away with stuff a lot as well.
And they could get them cheaper as well.
Yeah, a lot cheaper, yeah.
So, yeah.
And the production was non-union as well.
Let's talk about the tribes in the film. So did they use real tribe members, or was it?
I believe so.
Yeah,
2 tribes, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was the Yamamaro and the Shinari, something like that.
All I know, one of them lived like
tree
trees,
people. Yeah, the tree people.
And one didn't.
Yeah, that's basically the difference. They didn't really define what. Like one of them was mostly kind of covered in grey mud, like Arnie and Predator, and then the rest of them kind of aren't. But then later on, they kind of are as well. When they're attacking them, you're like, you can't tell there's nothing to differentiate them.
And they were treated very poorly as well. They were like meat. Basically, any of the effect setups and things, people, they were. There's a setup in it when there's a fire, and they, the tribe were just left in the building until the last minute to get out. There's a scene where there's arrows or something being fired backwards and forwards. Quite a lot of the tribe people got hit with them. Not bothered, carry on.
Yeah.
And they were pushed, and it was almost they were a prop.
Yeah,
that could just be used and
moved
whatever.
around.
Yeah, and it kind of bothers me to this day that you watch a documentary about it today, you've got modern day actors and directors still calling them cannibals and this, that, and the other, when neither tribe were cannibals.
Yeah.
They were just indigenous to that area. Still calling them that.
And it kind of, obviously a lot of people talk about the animal killings and things, but I think sometimes that distracts a little bit from arguably a lot of the racist content and the stuff that is, potentially offensive. Because if this is the case, a lot of these people probably haven't seen, guns before, cameras before. That's probably somewhat true. And they're being utilised, they're not being paid, they're not being, they'll probably be rewarded in some form. I know that one tribe especially considered the monkey brains a delicacy because they were going to use a fake monkey, and they said no, and they had to kill 2 monkeys because one of the shots didn't work. So, but then they were given to eat. That was one of the other excuses for the animal killing. He said
all the animals were eaten, weren't they?
Yeah,
and they
for
said,
the tribe. And it was given to them.
He said the pig was pretty much slaughtered because some of the crew was sick of eating the fish out of the Amazon and things like that. So. That's another thing that one of his many excuses and U-turns for the animal cruelty.
Surprise.
The indigenous people were, like I said, they were just props. They were just there to make the numbers up. And you can see if you look at any stills or any of the information around, you can just there was a very famous one with him, the director shouting at one of them in his face.
Yeah.
And the guy's just looking at him
I don't know
what am I doing, sort of stuff, they did have, I think we call them fixers these days, and they have people kind of doing this, that, and the other.
Translators. And
stuff. They brought them stuff like chocolate bars and crap. Sure. But I'll be honest, if I'm going to be shouted at, even though I'm a big fan of chocolate, I want to be paid more than a chocolate bar.
Yeah, I'd say so too.
But I'll be honest, not much more.
I mean, you could be like one of the guys in the film that's just blowing cocaine up your nose.
Yeah, apparently there was a lot of that on set as well.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Early 80s.
It was the only way, people could get through stuff, apparently.
Yeah.
Was going to be, being high and doing this, that, and the others. But the director himself has openly said that he used drugs on set of his other films. Didn't say about this one.
There's enough to talk about, I think, without
He looks the type.
He's a cokehead. Yeah, probably. So I don't even know where to what else. Well, let's talk about I think we have to talk about some of the events and the things that take place. So one of the first things we see in the film is a woman being abused and vaginally tortured.
Dismembered.
Yeah, just the just absolutely I don't know, using foreign objects to damage her private parts, and it is disturbing. It really made me wince. And again, I think some of the stuff hasn't aged well, but that still, I think, was quite effective and effectively shot and made me think, fuck me, that's a bit much. And there's several gang rapes in the film as well, which, again, I don't think are quite as bad as what I expected. And I think because I expected the absolute worst from this film, including the animal slaughter, and that is still awful, it still made me wince and stuff, I think I expected it to be worse. But again, I think a lot of the arguments stemmed from a lot of the nudity and the sex and stuff like that. And again, the gang rapes go into murder. There's a fetus that's aborted and buried under mud. The woman has her head cracked in. These are all big kind of set pieces. There was supposed to be a piranha attack as well. I think someone was supposed to be fed to the piranhas. possibly the infidelity of the young lady that we'll talk about in a little bit. But apparently the underwater camera wasn't working. But probably the most infamous shot or sequence in the film is the young lady who is basically put through a spike of wood, like impaled all the way through a body, and the spike is coming directly out of her mouth. You'll see that on any image. Basically, you Google it and it'll come up on pretty much any shot from that sequence. And it is, again, very convincing. It's a very convincing shot, but and we'll talk about a little bit later what Deodato had to say about that shot and how convincing it was. But yeah, it did not sound fun working on this film.
But there is a film.
Okay. Tell us about that, Dennis. Tell us about the film. If there is a film to be, if there is ideas and concept.
I think if we just do a brief of the storyline.
Sure. And then give you an idea.
And then pick up aspects of it.
Sure.
So basically, the story is around documentary team going into the Amazon to film the natives, basically. They don't return, so the company, the film company, sends a guy out to kind of save them or bring them back or whatever. So the first part of the movie is basically just him getting from A to B, really, isn't it? Trying to find out, meets one of the tribes.
They're following the trail that these explorers or documentarians have. They find things as they go along that explains later on. Yeah. So they follow this trail, he meets the tribe. In a way, he befriends the tribe like him, he gives himself to the tribe. There's a scene in a very nudie scene again in the water, but this is part of him. A lot of nudity in this film as well.
Lots of nudity.
A lot of dongs being released.
A lot of
dongs.
A lot of them. And as kind of a reward for him, giving himself to the tribe, so to speak, he gets taken to this little shrine. And it's basically the bones and bits of the documentary crew with the reels of film. Cut a long story short, he gets the film and goes back to New York. Goes up to see the production company. He says he's found this, he's done that and the other. He's not watched it yet. And they've said, right, get it watched. Let's get it released. He watches it and he's a little bit disturbed. Oh, he's a lot disturbed. And he doesn't want the film to go out. So yet another meeting. And the production company say, no, we want to set out. He goes, right, okay, let's all go and watch it together. So they all go into this room and then they play the footage. And that's when you get the found footage
aspect
of the movie. So now you're watching the documentary makers making their so-called documentary. And things go a little bit awry, don't they?
Quite.
It's the footage is very raw. And I think that gives it a very, very good kind of feel around it. Throughout the documentary being made, obviously there's these animal deaths, but there's also questionable actions that the documentary crew have to make it more interesting. And this goes back to what we were saying at the beginning about how media can manipulate things. So they were doing things to kind of make it look better on film. They set fire to a hut. They shot somebody, one of the tribe's people. The lady on the stick. It's heavily implied that it was the documentary crew that put her on that stake
after gang raping her.
After gang raping her, yeah. I was going to come back to that. But,
sorry.
Trying to stay away from the rapey bit.
Sorry, yeah. Well, it's kind of unavoidable, Dennis. You can't have a film with multiple gang rapes and not talk about them. Unfortunately,
it's cut really well, and when the guy starts filming it, he's kind of smirking. And he goes, "I'm filming this now." Oh my god, that's so terrible.
That's one of my favorite bits. I think it's some really good. Depending on how you feel about the acting of this, I think that moment's quite genuine. Yeah. And it's about they are staging things. They are using and abusing these tribal members to get what they want out of them, because they're trying to make it look like there's a tribal war going on between the two tribes. But the white film crew, the supposed protagonists, arguably, of the film, are actually the villains.
Yeah. The white people go into this place that's supposed to be the intelligent. They're there with all the technology. Yet they're manipulating the whole thing. There isn't a war between these two tribes.
Absolutely not.
No matter how hard they push it, it doesn't ever come into that sort of thing. But that's what they want. They want them to be showing these different activities. And a lot of the stuff within the film as well, they cause. The tribal people don't want any part of it, but they push things and they do stuff so there's a reaction. And the reaction basically at the end of it is that they all get killed in
spoilers.
Well,
but it's a found footage, isn't it? And
it's a film that came out in the 80s. So,
true, that as well. But
there's a really good shot. The kind of last shot of the found footage is one of the main documentary makers just kind of like falls on the floor with the camera and his eyes twitching and he's got blood on his face and then it goes dead and then it goes back to the screening room and everybody is shocked now. It's not what they expected.
There's one of them is supposed to be this woman and you think, oh, she'll be this calming, lovely, kind of maternal, soft, sensitive. And she's the hardest one. She says, the more you rape people's senses, the more they want. They can't get enough of it. Like, that's a line in the film. And she's like, we need this footage. We need to see this. We need to get people to show it. And she used the term sensationalize and sensationalist because that's what Deodato is trying to say about the media and the way it's used and the way it's abused. And again, the Mondo films that you were talking about, the Mondo Kane especially, would set shit up. Like, it's not real. Well, look, it's not technically a documentary if you're, or reality TV does it as well.
Exactly.
It's all fucking staged.
Yeah, they put things in there to get reactions and stuff. So quite ahead of its time, really.
I think so, yeah. There are, obviously, a lot of people think it was The Last Broadcast or the Blair Witch Project, which was the first found footage film. And coincidentally, none of the film's production team on either film had seen Cannibal Holocaust. So then they wouldn't have dared made this type of movie if they had seen that before.
But it is officially the first found footage movie.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah. But
we'd had like mockumentaries before, like fake documentaries and things like that.
And as much as we've talked about the kind of negative of the movie, there are some really good things within it. He is a good director.
Yeah.
Whether his cause comes out in the movie or not,
sure.
It's beautifully shot.
I think the cinematography is excellent.
Yeah, it's like a doc. It's funny. It's like a documentary. It's beautifully shot. I think the soundtrack is nice, which is weird. The soundtrack's quite lovely, and it's all these atrocities and this nice tune in the background. The idea of the found footage, I think, is really cool, and.
The lovely green vistas and that lovely music that brings you into the film. You're like, oh, this will be all right.
Yeah, this will be fine.
And it's like Cannibal Holocaust. You're like, oh, okay.
And the contrast between the lush areas and how the tribal people are and how one with nature, and then it cuts to New York, which is great and dark,
depressing, cold.
Everyone's wearing grey clothes and. It's a massive contrast on it. So there are some really good stuff in it.
The juxtaposition is very intelligent.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I don't want to recommend it. I don't think you want to recommend it to people either.
No.
But I think there is quality here, but you need to kind of get around the more troublesome, problematic things in the film. But then you're kind of watching it for that as well. If you are going to watch it, that's kind of there. There's animal cruelty-free cuts out there that are available, I think. I know it's just come out on 4K. I'm not sure if it's available on that or if it's just uncut. But check it out if you want to. But, heavy warning what you're going in for. I think we've talked about all the stuff that is in it. Beheadings, castrations... You name it, it's all in this film. Like, if you can list a horrible thing, they do it in this film. But I think the problem I have with it is I think that's a very good message that he's trying to say. I think he puts the message across quite well and quite clearly, not in a ham-fisted way. I do think some of the lines are a little bit on the nose. I'll be honest. Some of the scenes, especially with Kerman, who's the porn actor, who is the lead who lives, who finds the footage. He was in Spider-Man. He's the guy on the barge right at the end of Spider-Man.
And Debbie Does Dallas.
He was in Debbie Does Dallas. Who didn't Debbie do in Dallas? But he was mainly a porn actor, but he was trying to break into the mainstream. Yeah, sort of worked, sort of didn't. Regrets being in this film. Most people do. All of them do in some form. But yeah, I think the problem is he's taken this message so far that he's actually become like the characters in the film, in the found footage, that he's become a monster in the production, during the production, and killing animals, mistreating people, mistreating the local tribes and telling them to do stuff, and make them stay in a burning hut far too long to the point where they're going to die from smoke inhalation. You know, you could describe him as a monster. I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about him, but I know the stuff we've said now, I know people are going to make a judgment on him based on that. But yeah, I think it muddies his point, you know.
But I also think the message he's trying to get gets lost completely.
Yeah, sure.
With all the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, because it's so shocking.
Yeah, and the fact they show in stock footage of the Mondo stuff and things like that is like a film within a film within a film. So he's really pushing the point, but then, like you're saying, it just gets kind of lost.
Yeah. Well, he's talking about the exploitation of the media and what is reality and what is a documentary. But he's an exploitation filmmaker.
Yes.
And he's exploiting people, these tribes, these actors, probably other people on set, probably the other, the cinematographer. The cinematography in this is fantastic. Yeah. The shaky cam, all this other stuff, it really works. And that bit that you were talking about where they gang rape the girl and then put her on the spike, there is a hard cut to black. And throughout the film, you don't have that up until that point. And that cut, for me, that heavy, hard cut, was quite jarring. And then I realised what he was saying. He was saying that they've put her on this stick. Yeah. And I thought that is a genius bit of editing and cinematography within this. There's moments without sound. There's some shots you can't really see what's going on. It's shaking. And that just adds to that realism and that feel. And I kind of understand why people were so shocked. I kind of understand the moral outrage, even though I'm sick of fucking moral outrages and I don't agree with most of them, if any. But I can kind of see where people were coming from, because even seeing it today in 2022, soon to be 2023, it's still shocking to this day. And he has, I'll give him this. He did what he wanted to do. He told the story he wanted to tell, and he did make one of the most shocking films ever. He accomplished that. The controversy and everything he wanted, he got it. So I think that's a good segue now to talk about the release of the film and the kind of the backlash, the reception of it. So first of all, Sergio Leone. Everyone's favourite Italian director. Good, the Bad, the Ugly, a few dollars more, all the good ones. He loved the film. He called up Ruggero and said, "This is an amazing film. The cinematography was excellent, the realism, everything, but people are going to hate you." And he was right.
No, it wasn't an understatement, was it?
No, he was right. Oliver Stone is a big fan of this film as well, and the hut burning in the film is very reminiscent of the hut burning in Platoon. So it does have some fans out there. Eli Roth is a fan, so much so he kind of remade it. It was heavily influenced by Ruggero and put him in Hostel 2, I believe. I think he's in. So it does have fans. People do like it. People find it entertaining and interesting. But some people didn't.
Pretty most of the world. See, it's strange, isn't it? Because for 10 days, it made a shitloads of money when it was released, before people started talking about it. And I was saying to Dan earlier, this is like pre-internet. This is like the kind of controversy and the outcry for this movie spread across the globe in like record time. Everybody kind of knew about it. It was in all the newspapers. But it did make money. So when it was released in Italy, it was released for 10 days before they pulled it. And it made 3 times its production value. So that's, obviously, movies these days, that's a massive success.
Absolutely.
It made a ton of money in Japan. But then people started to ban it.
Yeah.
And quite a lot of countries started to ban it, really. And it does have, like, you know, we say it is the first movie to be a found footage movie. It's also the last movie to ever get a complete ban in the US. Every single state. Now, there have been films that have been banned in other states and this and the other since, but this was across the board. Every single state banned it, and there hasn't been a film since. You know, and even in countries that you perhaps think might not be that kind of bothered by it, a bit more tolerant to it, banned it, gone. So people...
It's like a domino effect kind of thing, wasn't it?
So, and in the UK, the only reason why it came out over here is that they just didn't release it in the cinema, and then went straight to video. And it was a massive success on video. People wanted to see it. And people wanted to see it more once they banned it. It was one of those films that you'd go to an event and it'd be under the table. Here's a bit of Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, exactly. A little cheeky VHS copy.
And there's
there.
like, I get it. Because to watch it in its form now, as Dan just said, you kind of, it does look real. There is it's very visceral, isn't it? And
raw,
very
raw, yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't help the fact that the actors weren't seen for a while. Were they, Dan?
They weren't. So, Ruggero Deodato, much like the Blair Witch, asked for the actors to quietly disappear for a little while. For the space of a year. That was part of the contract. They weren't going to do any acting work. They were paid to make sure that they don't, you know, that they didn't turn up anywhere, didn't do anything, or weren't seen. And it was quite successful, let's say, because Italy decided he needed to be brought in for questioning.
Yes.
This film is the only film where the audience has seen it and gone, that director murdered those actors, and we need to try him in a court of law.
And so he was charged with murder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to say some people wouldn't like it. He was also charged with obscenity laws and animal cruelty. Of
course.
But it sounds so, but a lot of other actors have been charged with space.
Sure. I mean, Apocalypse Now, for example, is a film that everybody's seen everywhere, and that has an animal killing in it. But there's no cuts for that. There's no censoring of that scene, is there?
No.
No.
But they don't do it with a machete.
No. True.
But
then there's like other films out there as well that feature like child nudity, like American Beauty or The Hole, and things like that. They're not cut.
No. But this. It goes back to his original point about how the media can, you know, choose what we like and what we don't like. Can choose what we're going to, you know,
be offended by,
and deem what we're not offended by. But he also left himself open a little bit with his contracts. Because once they'd gone, he couldn't find them. One of the producers had the name of one of them, and that person had to then go and find all the rest of them to appear on Italian TV and say, "Da-da, proof of life."
You know what? That would make a good film. If one guy has to hunt down.
My brother said the same thing to go and look for them. But it's also he had to prove how he did the steak through the lady. He had to show how that was done because nobody believed that was done.
Because it is real.
Yes.
I always assumed it was they built it. It was like a puppet or it's clay or something. I don't know. I just thought it was an effect.
It was a woman on. Can you imagine just being that still and having a camera pointed at you? So there lots of outcries in the UK. Obviously, I've spoken about the video nasties and the.
Well, a policeman said. Yeah, a policeman said, "I've seen a snuff movie." And it's called Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why it kicked off the video nasties, and we get all the censorship now and stuff and all that other stuff. And I think around that time it probably was. I mean, you got a film like Hardcore with George C. Scott in. Check out our Changeling podcast, by the way. Good, there's a good film with him in. But yeah, there's there was a film called Snuff, I think, as well. Like, and it was sold as such. 8mm as well is very similar to Hardcore. So it's not an unusual idea, and it's not something that is out of the realms of possibility.
And it wasn't even the first movie of cannibal movie. This was about was it the fifth?
Maybe Italian one.
Yeah, Italian one. Because you know what Italians are like, they'll get it and they'll film every aspect of it. I think this was the third proper release of it, and then they went on and did another one. So it wasn't like this was different. I think it's the found footage thing what people couldn't get their heads around. And if you're watching that on a dodgy VHS, back in
low
the 80s,
quality
with your TV, like I go back now and watch like standard definition, and I think, do I need to clean my glasses? I also think today I've watched it in HD. It's not as shocking.
No, I think some of it has aged well, and some of it hasn't aged well. Some of it still looks good. Well, not good, but the effects are good, and the way the cinematography is good, and the way it's shot is good, the framing of it. But yeah, some of the effects or some of the scenes, like there's another gang rape towards the end, and all the tribal people are beating her up while she's naked, but it doesn't look like they're hitting her very hard. It's just like doop, 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 doop. But again, back in the day, you won't have seen that as clearly as we've done today. And
he did a good job with the camera kind of bouncing about and moving around, and so he did a good job, selling it. It just kind of it also bugs me a little bit that he keeps coming out changing stories about why certain things are done, why that was done, why the other was done.
Doesn't make him look that good, does it?
No, and then when you got actors in it coming out and they're all saying the same thing. But it's one of those movies that I wouldn't say it's a good movie, and I wouldn't say it was a bad movie.
Yeah.
There is something there worth watching.
There's a message there, and I think he delivered the message pretty well, but then, like you said, there's all these layers you've got to uncover, and then sometimes it's done quite subtly, sometimes it's very ham-fisted. But I think he is a good filmmaker. I just don't know if this is a good film. It's hard to say. I can't recommend it, but I can also understand why people like it and what people get out of it.
I think it's got like you're saying, good ideas. It's got some good things.
Like it's not just like, I think the cannibal movies that came after this probably were just, oh, here's some cannibals. This is what people like. Again, it's when anything is ever popular, people go, oh, let's do something like that. More blood, more guts, more this. And Hollywood always learns the wrong lessons from something being popular. And I think that's what happened. But this does have some. It has some meat on the bones, for lack of a better word.
Very good. Very good. But like zombie flesh eaters.
Sure, yeah. Lucio Fulci, yeah.
Yeah, the bit with the eye.
Yeah.
That always makes me go, close my eyes and back off from it. No matter how I watched it and how many times I've seen it. I've only seen Cannibal Holocaust, I think, twice. And there are the main scenes that make me pull that kind of face now are mainly the turtle.
Yeah.
But I think if I saw that over and over again, I don't think it would have that, I would keep doing that. But that bit in the zombie movie always makes me want to close my eyes.
Well, I think you were saying the other day about kind of like the rape scenes in this, like a lot of people say it's a lot of realism and stuff, but I found those not very real or not as horrifying as I thought they were going to be, or as long as I thought they were going to be. I know there's films like Irreversible, and there's other films that are more terrifyingly, or more exploitative, or more, in a way they're worse. Like it doesn't matter how long they are, but if they're as visible and horrible and disturbing as they are. And I think these ones, probably back in the day, again, were quite, with that grainy footage and stuff. I don't think they're quite as bad as I expected. They're still awful. The premise behind it is awful. It's terrible. But I think because I expected so much worse, I kind of went in a little desensitized, because I was quietly kind of dreading this, because I was kind of like, is it just going to be... There's no ideas behind it. There's no vision behind it. It's just going to be... If you're hearing fireworks, it's New Year. So Happy New Year, everybody.
That's what I think.
We're into 2023, and this is the first podcast in 2023. So if you are hearing any fireworks going off, curse them, because they're probably killing animals, dogs and cats and stuff, and they're scaring them, and they're all in the corners. People have really turned around on fireworks in the last few years. Have you noticed?
Pisses me off.
Does it?
Yeah, I don't like fireworks. I like them at organised things.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I just don't like someone in the garden firing off a massive, like...
When I was a kid, like kids at my school were putting them up cats' bums and shit. It was really...
Well, it's like, you get Halloween and then there's allegedly a break, and then you get bonfire night. Then why are fireworks going off from at least August?
You're not wrong, Dennis, because I think it's the same bloody family, or the same people that are setting these off that have been setting them off all year for me.
Oh, God, I hate New Year. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, let's get back to Cannibal Holocaust. Cannibal.
I also...
I almost called it Hannibal Holocaust.
I called it Hannibal Holocaust.
Did you?
I was talking to my brother about it earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm up for that film as well.
But I also think today, the audience today has, like, Hostel and Saw... and all these other kind of like torture porn type movies, even stuff like Hellraiser and things like that. Which
you got things like a Serbian film or Human Centipede 2.
Human Centipede, which Human Centipede 2 is disgusting in places, but it's not. It's kind of laughable as well.
Yeah, but it's like shock value, isn't it? But like with this, there is shock value.
Yeah, but in 1980s, you putting this on, it would be like putting on Saw for the first time or Hostel for the first time and going, Jesus, I wasn't expecting that.
And I think people are a little bit more like, they'll look at this and think, oh, how quaint, or how this is too old for me, I can't watch it, and things like that. And I know people who can't watch black and white films. Like I have no issue with that, but there's certain people out there who just go, I just don't watch black and white films. Fair enough, that's you. I don't agree with it, but that's you. But yeah, I think the thing is, when you go back and you're like when I watched The Exorcist, I know you love The Exorcist. When I watched it as a kid, I was laughing at it. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, but you're a dick.
Yeah, that as well. But I do need to watch it again. I haven't watched it since then, so I will get round to it eventually. But it made me laugh because I think even at that young age, I'd already seen much more convincing, real, shocking, violent, bloody things that, still the crucifix scene is still quite disturbing, and all that. Dennis is making some very lewd hand gestures right now.
Don't know what you mean.
Won't hold up in a courtroom. He's not going down like Ruggero Deodato.
No, I'll prove it.
He'll prove it. He'll bring somebody out, somebody hiding in the corner that'll bring in court. But yeah, I think people will see it somewhere like, oh yeah, look, this was what a cannibal film was back then, or ha ha ha, this was supposed to be shocking. I've seen things more shocking down my town centre. Yeah. It's a funny one. I'm glad I've seen it for the historical aspects, for what the effect has been since then, because it kind of was the apex of Italian exploitation. We didn't really. It kind of limped on a little bit after this. This was kind of it, really. This was the pinnacle, because like 70s was full of exploitation, 60s, and this is kind of like, and we're just kind of trailing off, and then you barely get anything in the 90s, and then even...
And if you do, it's crap.
Yeah, there you go. Or even Argento's really not pumping anything out then, is he, really?
No, not really.
But there you are, and that's kind of... So this is kind of the pinnacle, the apex, but also the downfall, which is quite interesting for a whole country's genre films.
But and also it's the first time people saw Italian horror was these cannibal movies, and it opened up a door for lots of people wanting to look at Italian horror. The 60s and 70s movies. Me being one of them. Like there's 72 films on the Video Nasty list. I think last time I looked, I'd seen about 62 of them, and I've seen far worse things on TV.
Well, I turned Driller Killer off.
Oh, it's boring, isn't it?
It's shit. It's fucking
That
awful.
battery's
And I
ridiculous.
like and I like that director, and I like the stuff he's done, but that one is fucking crap.
No, it's almost like a history lesson, really, with it. I've seen like.
I think we've
things.
probably covered some video nasties, haven't we?
Yeah,
I think we've probably
Bay of
covered.
Blood's a video nasty.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah.
But they're not like they were, and the thing is, like everything else, like the Satanic Panic and stuff. It goes back to what he was trying to do with this movie. It's media manipulating what we should be doing, and it's almost like
Well, it's a platform, isn't it, for politicians?
It's the little men being Christian again. A guy having a little video store with one wall of videos. No, you can't sell them anymore.
Yeah.
We're gonna send you to prison for 5 years. Back then, you could sexual assault somebody and not get 5 years.
Jesus.
But if you had one of these videos, you could be. It's
Now that is shocking.
yeah, and that's and that's what it was like. It was like you were giving out hardcore pornography to children, which you weren't. And there were loads of debates on TV, and I can't remember the guy's name. One of the directors, he was asked on a chat show. So what do you think about children seeing these movies? And he says, well, they're not made for children, and they're not. No. If it's got an 18 certificate, it's not made for children. There's a choice to put that on or move it out of the way. Now I had two older brothers. So I watched a lot of horror when I was a lot younger, and it's not made me a bit different at all.
Sure.
He says twitching and stuff, but no, I think in one way it's made me look at the medium in a good light and said there is, instead of just saying it's just crap lighting whatever. And I think Cannibal Holocaust treads all those lines from it being farcical in places, becoming what the director doesn't want it to become. But also under all that, there is a good movie under there. It's shot probably better than any sort of like these sort of movies around that time. Any of the war movies, the Vietnam films and things like that. It's shot far better than that. The soundtrack is great.
The juxtaposition between the green vistas and the lovely music.
Yeah.
All that.
And it's
brilliant.
And there is like I said, there is a movie under there. Would you watch it again?
I don't know. I think if I was to watch, I'd probably take out the animal killings. I think I'd watch. I think it's like Caligula. I think I would watch Caligula again, but I'd probably take out the hardcore porn. Like what me and Dan said, what I was talking about with those sex scenes as well. Like in the sex scenes in Caligula, it's like they forgot how to have sex. And in this, like when he jumps up, when Alan Yates jumps on his soon-to-be wife or partner in crime, he just starts like wrestling with her almost, and it's just like people don't have sex like that.
And a vagina must be in a belly or something.
Yeah, it's very much a Tommy Wiseau thing.
It's very much like showgirls, isn't it, in the pool? Just forget what you're doing. So there is aspects which don't stand up today. I watched it twice now.
Yeah.
I watched it for this, and I watched it many years ago.
Yeah.
But I think the version I watched many years ago was cut quite a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, I imagine.
I think you have to see it as a whole, to be honest.
Yeah. I like to tackle controversial films and controversial things, and I like to ask those questions: why and for what reason.
I think if you take away, especially the turtles, much as it's hard to watch, and it does have its own documentaries around it, I think you take away some of what those actors went through to do that.
Yeah, I guess.
And I think they deserve a little bit more than cutting it out completely.
Yeah,
because you can clearly see they're not comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
And also,
I guess again that kind of adds to the realism of the found footage, and again the realism of he's making these people look like monsters while being a monster himself. And you could argue that. I mean, all respect to him, R.I.P. and everything, but I can see why people would have that opinion. I don't have either opinion on him.
But what's the final line of the movie?
I wonder if we are the real cannibals.
And if you watch the movie, we definitely are.
Absolutely, yeah.
100% we are.
That's the point. That's the point he's making, because these guys go in and they set things up. The only time where they show any kind of remorse or any kind of reluctance is when they're gang raping the girl and the woman comes in and she tries to stop it because that's her husband or soon-to-be husband, her partner, pulling him off the girl, and you think, oh, it's because she's a woman and she thinks this is horrible and shouldn't be happening. But she goes, no, we're wasting film. We're wasting footage.
Yeah.
That was the problem she had with that.
Yeah. It's not a good line, that, is it?
No. But it shows it's clearly making a comment on like colonialism as well, isn't it? There's definite colonialism vibes in this.
And I think a lot more of these movies have come out about Native Americans and because history,
indigenous people.
History is written by the people who won it or had the ability to kind of.
Well, I mean that's what that's what this film is saying as well.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So highlighting that it's just a shame that he becomes what he's trying to kind of put a mirror onto him. But you can say that about a lot of people who try to kind of show, I'm not going to do this for this.
Well, even the title wasn't the original.
No.
Cannibal Holocaust was not the original title.
Nope.
He's used that title because he knows the word Holocaust is a sensitive word. We've said it a lot of times on this podcast. We absolutely know what it means or what it represents. But he did that. That's why the N-word is on so many blaxploitation films. It's to get a shock or a reaction and go, oh, fucking hell, that's...
Well, it's Green Inferno, that's what the shooting titles, wasn't it?
It was, exactly, yeah. And that's the documentary, the film within the film.
Yeah.
And that's what Eli Roth eventually called his film.
Yeah.
And then they tried to rename... I think the second one was called... Well, not... There's quite a lot of unofficial sequels to this film as well. So any cannibal film is basically like, oh, it's this one, part 2, and part 3. It's again, we've talked about Italian films and how they just fucking sequelize everything, even though it's not a sequel to anything. It's none of them are canon sequels. But yeah, it's silly. But it was one of them was known as the Green Inferno, but I think it was also known as Cannibal Holocaust 2. Again. Haven't seen any of them. This is part of a trilogy as well. Like we were saying, there was The Last Cannibal World, and then Cut and Run is another one. Another thing is he's still got some work coming out, Ruggero. There's a video game coming out, which is equally controversial. Surprise, surprise. Originally, I think it was just called Cannibal, and then they renamed it, and it was supposed to come out last year. Or was it the year before? 2021, so 2 years ago, and there was some small footage of it, very basic footage. He's writing it, he's writing the story. It is the same story as Cannibal Holocaust. It is a follow-up. There was also another cannibal film he didn't end up making in the 2000s because he was like, I'm going to take it way too far. And maybe he was right. Maybe he shouldn't have made that film, but it never happened for whatever reason. But this video game has been renamed and caused some controversy because they've called it Borneo Cannibal Nightmare or something like that. Borneo something. And all the people from Borneo have gone, we're not cannibals. None of us are cannibals. We've never been cannibals.
They should call it Yorkshire.
Fucking hell.
Is that going to make the cut?
We'll find out. Fucking hell. Well, there is that film Inbred, isn't there? Which is literally there's a film called Inbred, and it's basically a exploitation film. So it's like hillbillies, but it's in the UK, and they're all from Yorkshire. That is on Amazon Prime if you want to watch that. That's it's a film, and it's
you see,
there's a lot of humour to it. I will say that.
If I was to choose between Cannibal Holocaust and Eli Roth's Green Inferno, Cannibal Holocaust would win every time.
Yeah,
because of true atrocities, somebody trying to copy a movie and absolutely fucks it up as Eli Roth does, and it just turns into the biggest pile of crap ever.
Well, that's an atrocity all itself, isn't it?
And that to me is crap for a guy who says he absolutely loves the movie and then goes and makes Green Inferno.
Yeah.
Which is an absolute pile of stinky shit.
Can't say I've seen it. I've seen a few cannibal films, and we definitely had some American cannibal films like Texas Chainsaw, for example, or
Hannibal.
Hannibal, yeah.
We go upmarket.
That's very upmarket cannibalism.
We're doing cannibalism.
It's interesting though. Obviously, this is not the funnest film to watch or to sit through.
I've noticed we've not laughed once.
Not really.
It's just not like us, really, is it?
It's like usually we're having a bit of a joke, but I think these are serious topics. We need to take them seriously. It's strange to me that this is so serious because a lot of cannibal films, like Texas Chainsaw 2 or Motel Hell or Blood Diner or Blood Feast, they all have Eating Raoul, things like that. Parents, they all have this kind of black humor to them. This kind of like comedy. Like this is not that. Like even the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre has humor in it. You know that parts of it are supposed to be quite funny as well. And the second one, he kind of just steers into that. Yeah. And I still love it. And it's a bit like Gremlins and Gremlins 2. It's so interesting to see such a darkly serious, and there is humor in it. I will say there is humor in it, but because of the so many atrocities in it, and because the characters you're following are the worst fucking people in the world,
I find the humor really misplaced. Instead of like killing, a lot of movies, horror movies, they show something really, really vicious, and then they follow it up with a little bit of
cut the tension. Yeah.
Not this one. They'll make a joke or do something very early on, and then they'll do all the atrocities, and it's like, well, that would have been nice. Probably here, just to kind of break that. I find the humor just misses the mark completely in it.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's an afterthought.
I need to lighten the mood.
Yeah,
well, I don't know if you can lighten the mood.
Well, I think the best bit of lighten the mood is when he's interviewing the friends, the documentary makers.
This is before he's seen the raw.
Yeah,
because it's a bit weird because he has an interview about the footage he's found without actually having watched the footage, which I think is a bit odd. Like, wouldn't you not? I would go straight and look at this footage because I don't know what's on it, and I could be like going, "Hey, it's great footage."
Maybe he just has faith in them. He has a massive.
Well, he doesn't know them though, does he?
He has a wonderful mustache, and that's believable.
Well, he's the nicest person in the fucking film for a start. He's the only person who treats the tribal people kindly, nicely, and respects them. Like, no, those fuckers don't. There's no way.
So he's interviewing. Every single one of them goes, "Son of a bitch." Yeah. What did you think of him? He's my son, but he's a son of a bitch.
Yeah, because that's really good though. I like the kind of teasing to what we're gonna see. Yeah. Like, I like when they're following the path and the tribal person is showing that they burnt down the hut and they made us go inside and they shot my pig. And I like that they do that. Again, I don't know how the director made them do these sort of things, or what they understood, or what they thought was real, or who knows. I know that the girl that they pretend to gang rape was 14, which again is problematic in itself, and
only slightly.
Yeah, quite. So it's all very problematic.
But again, this is the Italian thing. Argento put his daughter on the stage naked when she was, I think, 14, 15.
Okay.
And filmed her, and it was fine.
Yeah.
So there is this kind of clash of cultures with things.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I talked about it before when I was covering some Japanese anime. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't really translate over here.
No.
Especially like legal ages of consent and things. So,
but yeah, and he is the nicest character in it. That mustache is amazing. The dub doesn't work, but he wears his suits well and smokes a pipe.
You know what I found interesting as well? Ruggero didn't know that actor was a porn star, and he said if he did, he probably wouldn't have cast him.
No, and that's
like that. That's his moral. Yeah. That's his moral. He's gonna die on that hill, that moral hill. Yeah, but then he's gonna slaughter. He's gonna slaughter a very young turtle. Turtles live to like they're 100.
I'm not having somebody in my film who has done Debbie. It's not happening.
Done Debbie.
It's not. I'm not having it.
And Debbie did Dallas. So
yeah, they can do
all of Dallas.
They can slaughter whatever, but if they've done Debbie,
that's it.
That's
a no-go.
How northern did I sound then?
Debbie. Hello, my name is Ruggero Deodato, and I'm not having you do Debbie again. Get fucked.
I went very northern. But
Debbie. I thought there was a very convincing Italian accent.
Debbie.
Good God. Well, I think we're slowly coming to an end. I don't know what else we could. Is there anything you want to mention? Or any other stuff?
I'm going to put myself out there and say I like the movie.
Okay.
And I'll never recommend it to anybody. I will. I was talking to my brother on the way over here today, And he says, is it any good? And I was like, I'm not going to recommend it.
Yeah.
You know, read up on it. If you want to watch it. But I liked it. I think there's elements in there. And I think it also helps the fact I know the history and stuff around it and things.
Sure, yeah.
I think that helps. I think, you know, don't want to speak ill of the dead. I think he's a bit of a cock.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. And I think there were better ways of putting this message across, which I think would have found a better audience.
Yeah.
But I kind of like it for what it is. It's a video nasty, which it is nasty in places, but it comes to something when the most shocking thing in it is the death of animals when there's a woman on a spike. I put my foot on a spike.
Did we say how they did that as well?
Yeah, he put the woman on a bicycle seat and then put some bolster wood in her mouth and then just covered all the seams up with blood. And then filmed it, and she just was completely still through the whole thing. And he had to do that in court. He had to show them how he did it because they didn't believe it.
He just brought her in, just wheeled her in.
Well, he brought. There's a picture of it where there's some step ladders,
right?
And there's a woman on looks smiling. It's like a normal day, and there's another lady with this big piece of wood about to kind of put it in her mouth and stuff, and that's what they showed in court to say that look. I didn't do anything. Look, she's
fake. It's a
all
fake.
There.
Crazy.
So, there you go.
Crazy. Well, you are not alone, Dennis, in liking this film.
Good.
So
because usually I do feel a bit alone.
You are alone. You are not alone. So I asked for some comments, and most of them are positive. So our friend Paul Meller, so that's at the Meller Geek on Twitter, he says, I haven't seen this one, and not sure I will do. Which is fair enough, Paul.
Sit down and watch it with your family. Lovely.
Sit your daughter down.
A good New Year movie. Maybe on a Sunday afternoon.
Lovely Sunday afternoon. Tomorrow, put it on. It's fine.
Watch Bambi and then this.
It's good. It's such a way to ring in the new year talking about this
Bambi, this, and Watership Down.
Yeah, maybe not. Paul continues, I love horror, but not really this genre.
Bless his little cotton socks.
Yeah, I can see why.
He's a sensitive flower.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Again, this is... When I say this is not for everybody, I mean it.
Well, when it was first released with the 5-minute cut, it was released on a label called Extreme Films.
Right.
So there you go.
And there's several warnings before the film starts, like several. And I think when they showed it on Shudder, they even put another warning just to make sure. And all Joe Bob was like... Even Joe Bob was like, we shouldn't be showing this. We should not be showing this. We're going to get complaints. And they did get complaints.
Do you not think it should be a Christmas Day movie?
I mean, maybe Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving would be really good.
Because that's kind of part of the colonialism aspect.
Look at you.
See?
You know, who says you're on that eyebrow? I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, dear. So, Paul still continues. Sorry, Paul. Let's see if you persuade me to watch it through this podcast.
I don't think we have.
I don't think we have.
No,
I think fair enough. Again, fair enough if you don't want to watch it. I absolutely agree. So, Damien, our friend who is an artist, and you've been on his podcast. What is that podcast called, Dennis?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'll leave it in the links. I'm
into that.
Omen to that.
He's a lovely man.
He is good. He's a good lad. And you had an excellent podcast on the death of Superman with him.
Thank you.
Go check that out. I will leave that link in the show notes as well. So go and check that out. But he says seen it many times, and it's one of my all-time favourites. Granted, it's problematic. Fucking hell, yeah. That's an understatement.
It's problematic underlined a few times.
Granted. I love that. Granted. It's problematic. But an absolute classic of the genre.
I think, I think that's a fair comment.
Fair enough.
He's a clever man, him.
I've
always said that.
Very
about
talented
him.
Man. Talented.
Good taste in bubble hats.
Good looking man. Great dog. I like his dog. Yeah. The only thing I have with those dogs is that they're kind of a bit 2D. Those kind of like the race hound ones. Because when you're looking at them, it's like,
Well, maybe
It's
next
almost
time,
like a vanishing point or something.
next time you take a picture, make it then in 3D.
There we go. Just slightly move to the right or slightly move to the left.
Slightly move and wear your Superman hat.
Always
Continue.
wear the Superman hat. So thank you for that, Damien. Again, go check Omen to that, the podcast. And yeah, it's good shit. I highly recommend. And he said some very nice things about my podcast in the past. And you know what? I'll probably have him on this year, and we're probably going to do another controversial film.
He likes controversial things.
Oh, it's shocking. It's really shocking to me. No, it isn't. So Max Byrne, Maxi Byrne, at Maxi Byrne on Twitter, he said, what a film.
There you go.
That's it. Neither good or bad, that comment.
They should use that on the cover of the DVD.
Quote it on the new 4K. We'll get your quote. What a film.
Yep.
I'm not even sure you can call it a film, but we'll go with that. What a film. What a film.
I believe a couple of years.
What a film, or what a film.
There was a movie a few years ago that used a tagline off one person, and it was probably the best movie I've seen this year. So they put that on, but under it says, but I've only seen 2. But they missed that out.
Yeah, they've cut that quote.
So it's very similar.
I don't think they can do that anymore. I don't think they're allowed to do that.
Probably the best movie I've seen this year, but I've only seen 2. Oh, this is probably the best podcast I've done all year.
Yeah.
I've only done this one.
We're only about an hour into the year or so. I can't remember. Oh, 30 minutes into the year.
30 minutes.
So this is your best podcast for the first 30 minutes.
Yes.
But also, we've got John Hammond, who is doing his own YouTube channel at the moment called Horromantic. So he is doing it, and it's inspired, the title, by when I covered on the VHS Strikes Back, Necromantic, which has some things in common with Cannibal Holocaust.
It's a wonder that you're as rounded as you are, really, isn't it?
That I'm all right and emotionally not stunted. No, excuse me?
Yeah.
That might not make the cut.
Shit. mentally ill.
Yeah, you're problematic, Dennis. That's what I'll say. I'll say you're fucking problematic.
I think you're allowed to use that again, aren't you?
I don't think so.
Sorry.
Dennis is sorry for the words he used. I will say that also Eli Roth used the term, when he was talking about this film, savages, quote unquote, which I don't think is very cool to say.
He also called them cannibal savages.
Yeah.
How can he...
He can't really get away with that.
Cannibal... And this was a modern documentary.
Modern documentary. Must have been in the last 20 years.
He had a hostile t-shirt on, didn't he?
Yeah, so I imagine it was...
But even the last 20 years, calling a tribe, you know,
can't
indigenous...
Can't call him that.
No, but then again, I probably can't call him a twat, but I have done.
There you go. Eli Roth, if you're listening, you're a twat.
Yeah, stop making movies and just talk about them. It's far better.
I actually do prefer when he just talks about films. So his love for films. Anyway, John Hammond. Our friend John Hammond. I love Cannibal Holocaust. This movie invented the found footage formula as we know it today, the Blair Witch Project, which those of a younger age seem to think. This set the standard, and what a standard. I guess it could be hard to enjoy, quotations, this movie. Such is its effect on the horror genre. For those who may not have seen it, it's very difficult to know what you're going into. I think you will now, after we've talked about it.
I think his summing up's good, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there are reasons that it was banned, but beneath all that is a very well-made movie. A cult classic that I can see being appreciated more as the years go on.
I like him. That's a very good summing up.
He's a good lad.
That's
He's a good lad.
I like that.
That was nice, John. I think what we've said has kind of mirrored that. I think.
And nobody in Blair Witch got arrested.
They did not.
Or anything like that.
No, they just got lots of money.
Lots of money and snot.
Coming out. Boring. I've never seen it, actually.
I don't like it.
I remember all the buzz.
You know what? I'm not a big found footage fan.
No, I know.
I have issues with it. And one of them's like, why are you standing there still filming and not running away screaming like a girl? Which I would do all the time. If a zombie came in now and started eating you, I wouldn't stand here filming it. I'd be out that window.
Fair enough.
So.
Well, Dennis, we've talked about this film for a very long time.
Do you like it? You've not said whether you like it yet.
I don't like it, but I don't hate it.
Okay.
I think it was an important film for me to see. It's an important film to be talked about and discussed, and I think historically it's an important film. I think there's a message in there, but I think it's muddy. I think it looks gorgeous when it is gorgeous. I think some of the effects work really well. I think some of the dialogue is good. Some of the acting is good, but I don't know how much acting is going on, to be fair. But yeah, it's a middle of the road film for me because of everything.
Yeah.
But I can see both sides of the argument. I can see people that fucking despise it. I understand why. People that love it, I understand why. But for me, it is what it is. But it's not, like you said, it's not one I'd recommend.
No,
but I think I'm glad I've seen it. I don't think I will see it ever again, but I think it was an important one, and it's an important one. I think it's a good one for this this format of the podcast to do first, I think. So we can see kind of the next film will hopefully be a little bit nicer.
And it's Debbie Does Dallas.
What a rough production history that Debbie Does Dallas. Anyway.
Chaffins.
Dennis, you're still not on the social medias, are you?
No, I don't. Listen, I'm thinking.
I'm always going to ask you.
I'm thinking this year to go on just to promote you and promote this podcast and little bits.
There's no pressure. There's no pressure. Again, like I said, you could just share what I share.
Yeah,
you don't have to post.
You know my reasons why.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't blame you either.
Thank you.
So you can find me on Facebook at Secret Bores, Twitter and Mastodon at Dan_Bores, Instagram it's Spider Dan Secret Bores. Review, like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. And don't forget to use the hashtag Prepare for Prattle when you interact with us. And if you want to join the Prattalion and to be briefed in full on the Secret Bores, swing over to Prattle World at spiderdanandthesecretbores.com. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I am Jax Musing, Simon Cotton, Paul Meller, Max Burns, Scott Hodgson, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, and Tony Farina. For their continuing donations, it is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. And Happy New Year, Dennis.
Bollocks.
And Happy New Year, listeners.
Yes.
Goodbye.
I'm going away and impaling Daniel, so see you later.
Bye. May old acquaintance be forgot.
Bollocks.
I'm gonna forget you, Dennis. Forget you.
It's not nice, is it?